Welcome back, Pokemon trainers. We are here in the final round of Swiss at the Bilbao Special Event 2022. I'm Luke Romy, joined on the desk by Jamie Boyd for this final round. How are you feeling at this stage of the competition after all the games we've watched?
It's been a fantastic tournament so far, and we are going to be concluding these Swiss rounds with a win and an in-game. They are always the most exciting because, of course, if you do win the match, you are going into that top cut for tomorrow. If you do lose, you still have the opportunity, but it's much less secure than if you do win your final round. So we are going to be featuring two players that are currently a 6-1 record, looking for that 7-1, trying to get into this top cut. So it's going to be Franck Bourachon versus Fernando Risoto. So yeah, it's going to be a fantastic game coming up here.
Yes, and you can, of course, at home interact with the stream and vote on who you think might be the victor out of Fernando and Franck, just based on what you may already know about these players. I have to say, I am still a little bit shaky from that previous game that we saw. It was brilliant. And I was also catching a little bit of the Spanish stream that Victory Road is also featuring. And there was a Porygon Z, Jamie, and I was very excited. And I can tell you now, having a look at the team list of these two teams, there are going to be some amazing surprises in the Pokemon choices as well.
Yeah, we've had some very interesting restricted pairings coming on the team, but they've been paired with much more common partners, the more expected Pokemon that you'd be able to see. And like you said, on the Spanish stream, we were able to feature that Porygon Z. We have two very unique choices, one for each player going into this final round as well, that I'm very excited to be featuring.
Yes, and we'll be able to tell you a little bit more about it once our players are all ready to get into the match. But I know there is one that you certainly have your eye on, Jamie, and we'll definitely make sure that you get to talk about that when the players are ready. But this is the thing, as you mentioned, this is the win and in. And you're at this point in the competition where you've battled it out through a really long day, multiple Swiss rounds, and it really comes down to, are you going to be able to play tomorrow, or are you going to be knocked out the competition? And this one win is what stands in the way of that.
Yeah, so it's going to be a very crucial match, and we can see the players here now coming out. So start off with, we've got Fernando, and we featured many players on this team, on this stream, sorry, that don't have too many achievements behind their belts, but this is what these tournaments are for. Lots of players are coming out and having breakout tournaments, and we get to see what their favorite kind of Pokemons are as well. The Tapu Lele, a very strong choice coming out for Fernando. But yeah, that's been three players throughout this stream that have not had achievements yet, and I think the yet is very crucial.
I love that.
And they are very much proving that they can be getting those achievements. And Fernando is one step away from being able to make it into his first top cut here. And yeah, we've got Franck coming out as well as his opponent.
I love that, though, as well, when you say it's an achievement to have Tapu Lele as your favorite Pokemon. It's like it's a hard Pokemon to love or something. It's an adorable Pokemon, but certainly one that we haven't seen too much of as of recent events. But of course, looking forward to seeing what both Fernando and Franck are going to be able to do coming into this match. And like you said, that yet, who's going to be the victor and start adding to those accolades? Who's going to be the player to keep your eye on going forward?
Yeah, well, it is both of these players, as we are featuring two very unique choices. We can finally reveal there what the teams are going to be coming out from both of the players. We've got Snorlax coming out on Fernando's side of the field, and we got a Cradilly coming out for Franck's side of the field. So two very unique choices coming out for both of these players, and I'm very happy to be featuring them.
I mean, Snorlax is a Pokemon we've seen a lot of usage of in previous formats as well. It's very bulky. You can go for something like the Belly Drum and get the high attack stat and then start dealing out some really powerful damage with something like a high horsepower. So many different move pools that it can have. But I want to talk a little bit about Cradilly. You were very excited, Jamie. Will you tell us a little bit about what might be in store for us?
Well, we've seen Gastrodon dominate at this point, purely because of its ability. Its Storm Drain ability to keep the Sun matchup safe from the Water-type attacks, usually that come out from a Kyogre. Cradilly can do exactly the same thing. It is another Pokemon that has access to that Storm Drain, so it's going to be able to do exactly the same thing that Gastrodon can do in terms of the Storm Drain. It does very different other things. It can't go for the Yawns. It isn't as good against the opposing Zacian, but it can do some very nice things as well. At least we're not seeing it, at least in this lead coming out for both of the players. It's going to be a Whimsicott and a Charizard coming out for Fernando's side of the field, and Franck is leading with the Calyrex and Regieleki, a very classic lead.
I mean, very offensively speedy Pokemon here at the moment. Calyrex and Regieleki both very, very fast Pokemon, and Regieleki in a great position to start firing off some big electric type damage into something like the opposing Charizard. As well, it could go for something like a Max Strike and start lowering the speed on Fernando's side, because Fernando has speed control options of his own as well, with Whimsicott being able to go for something like a Tailwind, boost up the speed, or Charizard could also go for something like a Max Airstream. But you have to watch out for the offensive pressure Franck is currently putting onto Fernando.
Yeah, it's one of the more offensive leads that we see coming out from players these days with that Regieleki. Going for the Dynamax with at least one of the Pokemon here. Usually is that Regieleki paired up with the Calyrex because you do want to be going for some of the speed control that can come out with this, the Airstream or the Max Strikes coming out from the Regieleki, but usually it's going to be the Max Darkness coming out, so that the Astral Barrage is going to be doing a lot more damage. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Lightning coming out into this Charizard.
Okay, so we've got here another Dynamax coming out here from the, I believe this will be the Charizard. I think it would be unusual to see a Dynamax Whimsicott, but I mean, madder things have happened, but it is going to be this Charizard, and I think it's quite risky staying in a position where you're facing down against something like the Regieleki, but if you can go for the Tailwind, which when you look at it, Frank doesn't really have a way to stop at this point, then Charizard could possibly try and deal with this Regieleki before it's able to move. Whimsicott goes with his Prankster ability to get that Tailwind up on the field, get the speed doubled straight away as Charizard goes for the G-Max Wildfire, connecting into the Regieleki, going to be able to do a huge chunk of damage. It's not enough to pick up the KO against it though, however, but it will have that residual damage chipping away at both the Pokemon on Frank's side, and if that Calyrex is also wearing a Focus Sash, that will be chipped at the end of this turn. Whimsicott, however, no Focus Sash there, has been KO'd with a one-hit knockout.
Yeah, and you've got the Airstream boost on the Regieleki and the Calyrex, so it's probably still going to be outstreaming this Charizard even in the Tailwind, because Regieleki and Calyrex Shadow Rider are super speedy Pokemon, and you get to finish off the turn with a single target Astral Barrage because that Airstream was able to KO the Whimsicott because there was no Focus Sash. Like you said, the Focus Sash is probably broken on this this Calyrex if it does have that as its item choice. But you've done some very nice damage to the opposing Charizard and probably outspeed with both your Pokemon at this point. So you really need the Zacian to be coming in to still probably outspeed both the Regieleki and the Calyrex in that Tailwind condition, and that is what we are seeing coming in for Fernando. So they do need to be making use of that Tailwind, and it did have to be that if they brought in the Groudon to try and get the Solar Power activate on the Charizard. Both those Pokemon are probably still under speeding, so I like the switch in of the Zacian here to try and make use of that Tailwind.
Definitely want to capitalize on the fact that Tailwind does stay up on the field on your side regardless of the Pokemon, whereas if you go for something like the Max Airstream, it's only attached to that Pokemon that benefited in that turn, so it makes your kind of flexibility to switch and move your Pokemon in and out a little bit more restricted. Regieleki, however, is the faster here, going for the Max Airstream, finds it down onto the opposing Zacian, so now essentially Frank has set up a Tailwind of their own on their side of the field, so we're going to be evenly matched here on the speed boost. Regieleki obviously very happy to get back into that plane. Calyrex is going to go for the Astral Barrage. It doesn't find its mark on the Charizard though, hanging on with only 13 hit points remaining as Zacian goes for that Behemoth Blade, finally able to move despite being relatively fast Pokemon in its own right. Regieleki's not going to be able to survive that though, but I think it's done a critical job getting those boosts, but Frank's now going to bring in a Pokemon that is not going to be able to have benefited from them. Yeah,
but the Airstreams was the crucial thing on the Calyrex, because now it definitely outspeeds both the Zacian and the Charizard. Maybe not anymore, because that Airstream is being fired off into the opposing Calyrex. And even if it did still outspeed after this Airstream, that is enough chip damage to put it in range of the Wildfire that is still active on the field. So going to be losing both the Regieleki and the Calyrex on this turn. And now you've got your Charizard KOing itself as well to its own Life Orb. So lots of KOs all around here.
Yeah, been a very devastating turn here. Calyrex, as you can see, will go down to the G-Max Wildfire residual damage. And that really does show how setting those things up, yes, Charizard has gone down now, but having that residual damage has allowed Fernando to be able to pick up a KO there, where if you didn't have it on the field, like you mentioned, Jamie, that Calyrex would have been in a phenomenal position, speedy and powerful. This now gives our Pokemon trainers the opportunity, though, to bring in some Pokemon from the back. Fernando is going to bring in that Groudon. Frank is going to have no choice but to bring in the Incineroar and the Charizard as well, and getting this Intimidate down against both of these physical attackers on Fernando's side is certainly beneficial.
Yeah, and it's interesting not seeing the Groudon come out for Frank's side of the field. The Charizard in an interesting position here, because it would be very strong against the opposing Zacian and the Groudon, because the Groudon set up the Sun for the Charizard so it can make use of the Solar Power, but the issue is that the Tailwind is still active, so the Groudon would still be able to outspeed the opposing Charizard. It didn't get an Airstream boost from the Charizard going for that, but you do have to contend with the potential Fake Out that can come out from the Incineroar this turn.
Yeah, Zacian just going to go for the Fake Out here, as is the Groudon. So not for the Fake Out, for the Protect from the Fake Out. There we go, mincing my words once again. But I think you called it there perfectly, Jamie. Incineroar only gets the Fake Out once now because it's switched in. It can't switch out and switch back in. So it's good to be able to kind of burn that from the Incineroar. Blast Burn coming out from that opposing Charizard, again, can deal a huge amount of damage, but the restrictive factor of that Blast Burn is once you connect with it, you have to then take a turn to recharge. And that leaves you very vulnerable, particularly against two very heavy-hitting Pokemon like Zacian and Groudon.
Yeah, it definitely would. But at least you able to stall out one of the turns of Tailwind. There's only one more, so the Groudon still is able to outspeed the Charizard, at least for this turn. We'll have to see if it is going to be protecting itself to stall out that last turn of Tailwind. And you really need to commit the Rock Slide into the Charizard to be able to KO it, but then is that in combination with the Fighting type attack, we assume is on the Zacian, going to be enough to KO this Incineroar here? So it's going to be interesting to see how all of these Pokemon are trained, which can survive, whether you target down the Incineroar with a combination of the Precipice Blades and the Sacred Sword, or because the Charizard is protecting itself on this last turn of Tailwind.
Yep, just going for Protect here, and Zacian is going to go for the Play Rough, connecting down onto the opposing Incineroar, does a significant chunk of damage to it, and just unfortunately moves going into that Protect on the Charizard.
Yeah, so good call on the catching the Protect there. The Incineroar's not going to be able to survive that combination of attacks. Very nicely done to be able to catch that Charizard. And the Solar Power is slowly taking its way down as well, so the Charizard, even though it's going to be resisting the Zacian coming out here, it's going to be able to still be outsped by the opposing Zacian and be able to KO it. You probably got to Blast Burn to be able to KO this Groudon at this point, and then that would just mean you're recharging again, so the Zacian would be able to just fire up multiple Behemoth Blades.
Exactly, and Zacian going to go for that Behemoth Blade now, targeting down up into the air, down into that opposing Charizard that is left all alone and exposed. Not going to be able to pick up the KO against it, but particularly when you combine next to that Groudon, it's going to be able to deal some formidable damage, particularly when it doesn't even have to take a Blast Burn. It's able to dive out of the way of that and follow up with a Heat Crash. Not able to pick up the KO, but Solar Power, that'll do it.
Yeah, that will absolutely do it. So, and that seems to be it for Franck's side of the field. It seems like we had the players inverted there, unfortunately, so apologies for that. So it seems like Franck is actually going to take that first game in that set. So, yeah, it was interesting to see the Regieleki still outspeed the Zacian, even though the Tailwind was set up. Only a +1 was able to outspeed it, so probably going to be a bulky Zacian coming out on that side of the field. But that still wasn't exactly enough because the Calyrex was just taken care of. It was nice to get your Calyrex in +2 speed to be able to outspeed, but then just got KO'd immediately, so you couldn't really make use of that.
Exactly, but that was a really quick game one. Very, very offensive straight out the bat. And there was that one turn where we had 3 Pokemon all KO'd due to various factors, whether it was with recoil or whether it was to do with residual damage. So it was quite interesting to see all these different mechanics of the game that can all add to that chip damage, all just start working away at these Pokemon and resulted in 3 KOs.
Yeah, and you can see the benefit of just the Gmax Wildfire there, even without the Sun. The Sun was set on the field eventually, but the Charizard was gone at that point. But it was still able to fire off just a Gmax Wildfire, and that in combination with the Airstream was enough chip damage to eventually whittle down that Calyrex to put a stop to it from being able to go for the Astral Barrages after it got the speed boost as well. So you can just see the benefit of those damage over time Gmax moves that are coming out, even though they can be super strong to be able to KO almost anything in the Sun. You don't need that if you're just getting extra chip each time.
And that's the thing, we're in the final round of Swiss as well. Every single game counts at this point, and it really is crucial to make sure that you're not losing a Pokemon too early or sacrificing a Pokemon where you really don't need to, because you might need that game in order to keep pushing through to try and close it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see if there's going to be any adjustment coming from either player. I quite liked the Regieleki going for the Airstreams to try and not match the Tailwind, but try and overtake the Tailwind, and did manage to achieve that, but not enough in the next turns because the speed boosts that were put on the field were taken care of because you lost the Calyrex. So that is a good way to counter the Tailwind of the Whimsicott effectively, but you need to be able to make use of it a lot better, and you need to be able to maybe put a stop to the Charizard. You can go for something like a Max Lightning to be able to kill the Charizard. It did just go on the offensive as the Tailwind was set. Groudon is always a potential switch into a Max Lightning, so you do need to be wary, but if you get Max Lightning the Charizard, you're not going to get any of the Airstreams that are coming in the future. Then you can Airstream with your own Regieleki in the future.
Yeah, that's very true. We didn't see any of those kind of spicy Pokemon takes that we had with the Snorlax and the Cradily feature. Could always be a nice adjustment for game 2, you know, go big or go home, I guess.
Yeah, would be very nice to feature. And Snorlax is a Pokemon that can take on Calyrex Shadow Rider very well because of the normal typing. We don't see too many normal Pokemon in this format currently, and a lot of players opt for the Dark typing to be able to counter their Calyrex, usually the Incineroar and the Grimmsnarls as well, and then some other Dark type Pokemon, but they resist the hits. Normal Pokemon just completely ignore it entirely because of the normal typing being immune. So that is something that is less considered by players and very much considered here for the Snorlax that could be countering the Calyrex, but at least not on this turn. There's going to be the Whimsicott and the Charizard coming out once again for Franck's side of the field, and then the Regieleki and the Calyrex for Fernando again, so we're sticking to what we know.
Yep, and just to clarify for all our viewers at home, Fernando is on the left-hand side of your screen with that Regieleki and Franck on the right-hand side. I blame the Regieleki. It gets into the wires and fries things a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, and it'd be interesting to see if there's any switch-ups here. We've got the same leads. We know that the Regieleki would be able to put itself faster than both Pokemon, even if the Whimsicott clicks the Tailwind. But then do you go on the offensive and just ignore the Airstream to go for the Max Lightning, KO the Charizard? Potentially KO the Charizard, that is, because the Groudon did not switch in. That was the main thing that you had to contend with if you do choose to go for the Max Lightning that turn. But the Charizard is just staying in. It does seem to be going for the Dynamax here. But that does indicate that the Regieleki is not going for the Dynamax because the Charizard is going for it first. So that means Regieleki is just staying its regular form here.
Yeah, really good observation there. Regieleki not going to be going for the Dynamax on this occasion. It could happen later on if it wants to survive. But Whimsicott is going to go for the switcheroo, going to throw an item over to Regieleki, and it is that eject button while Regieleki gets rid of its magnet. It gets to go for the Electro Web though, reducing the speed once again on the opposing side, and that's something we've seen a lot in this set so far, is these speed control moves, trying to make sure that you're gaining that momentum. Calyrex goes for the Astral Barrage, capitalizing on the fact that there was no Tailwind in play, and there will not be now that Whimsicott has been KO'd by the follow-up of the Astral Barrage, and Calyrex is able to get a Grimnade boost to boot as well. Charizard, however, going to be able to go for that G-Max Wildfire to no surprise. Goes down on that Regieleki that is so delighted with this eject button, but doesn't, it doesn't really matter. It just will be KO'd in one hit, and the Focus Sash, that is the item on that Calyrex, will be broken as well.
Yeah, it's going to be permanently switching out here, unfortunately. So not the greatest use of the eject button, unfortunately. It's always nice to try and catch the Dynamax Pokemon going for the with the eject button, but the Regieleki did not go for the Dynamax there. Very smartly stayed in its regular form, went for Electro Web instead, and the Whimsicott being KO'd without setting the Tailwind should be very crucial here. The Calyrex has got a Grimnade boost, so it's going to be doing very, very significant damage. The Groudon is coming in for Frank's side of the field. Both these Pokemon are going to be underspeeding that Calyrex. You get to launch off your Astral Barrage very freely at this point. Charizard is probably going to be even in range of the Astral Barrage now, so it's a very, very strong start for Fernando. The eject button, usually trying to catch your opponent off guard, did not work in this regard, unfortunately, and that puts Fernando in the driving seat.
I mean, I really like the observation there from Fernando, realizing that there was no Focus Sash on the opposing Whimsicott, and 9 times out of 10, the other item is going to be that eject button. So concluding that could be a play that Frank wants to make in the game too. Really wise not to Dynamax, and that means that Fernando still has access to that in this game. Has access to it, is going to use it.
Yeah, definitely needs to. So you can reasonably Dynamax either Pokemon here. Groudon or Calyrex would be very viable to Dynamax targets. Calyrex would have been able to make use of that +1 that it got from the Grimnade, but content to launch off just Astral Barrages at this point, and Groudon is going to be the Pokemon going for the Dynamax here. So we're probably just going to be seeing Astral Barrage to KO the Charizard and then some massive damage into the opposing Groudon. But we are not seeing that Astral Barrage hit that Charizard because it is going to be max guarding.
Yeah, Charizard says, no, you cannot do any damage against me. I'm going to max guard right in front of the Astral Barrage. Groudon, however, not so lucky, gets knocked out with a one-hit KO with that critical hit. Calyrex, enraged by the max guard, says, do you know what? Okay, I will put all my anger towards you and get another Grimnade boost, so I'm going to be even more of a formidable threat going forward. Groudon goes for the Max Quake, but to no avail. I mean, I was going to say one synergy that would have been really cool from Fernando is if you maybe were starting to go for Max Phantasms with the Calyrex and then following up with, a physical type move from the Groudon after lowering the defense of the opposing Pokemon. But Calyrex is just like, no, I can do all the damage on my own, thank you very much.
Yeah, that was a lot of damage coming out with that critical hit. And you can see the Max Quake would have almost certainly being launched off into that opposing Groudon, but then not going to affect that Charizard as it gets redirected. And it did go for the Max Guard as well, so that's not going to be too impactful there. And pretty much going to seal this game at this point. The Calyrex, because it was able to pick up the knockout on the Groudon, gives itself another Grimnade boost. That KO would have usually gone to the Groudon that did go for the Max Quake, but now you're at +2 stages of special attack. This is going to hurt.
Oh, it certainly does. Nearly gets the KO on the Zacian as well. But, Zacian able to hang on there a little bit, but will be very easy for Groudon to be able to pick up the KO against it. Calyrex getting another Grimnade boost. I believe that's 3 so far in this game, so going to be at +3 special attack. Zacian will have the opportunity there to go for a Behemoth Blade, the move that we've seen Zacian do time and time again in this tournament so far. Finds a Smark on the Groudon, but not able to pick up the KO against it. Groudon just too strong at this point and can finally connect its Max Quake, not going into a Max Guard, into the Zacian this time, and will be able to take this game for Fernando, making it 1 apiece. We're going into a game 3, Jamie.
Yeah, and that's always what we love to see in the win and in game. So now it is coming down to a crucial game, not even a crucial set. We are down to the final game to decide who is definitely going to be advancing into the top cut tomorrow. And yeah, that was. We said that the first game was explosive and over very quickly, even quicker in that game too. The Calyrex just went on a rampage, just launching off the Astro Barrages very nicely, not Dynamaxing the Regieleki, not using up the Dynamax with the eject button that would have hit into it. So yeah, the Tailwind was very crucial in that game 1, but the fact that the Tailwind was not set on the field at that point, you needed it to be able to outspeed the opposing Calyrex. And we saw what happened if you do not. It is just able to launch off the Astral Barrages very freely and just keep on getting the Grimnade after Grimnade. And even with that critical hit, it would have been interesting to see the speed interactions of the opposing Groudons. If the Groudon on the Calyrex side of the field still outsped, Astral Barrage probably is going to KO in combination with the Max Quake. It would have just been interesting to see if the Groudon had anything to be able to deal with the opposing Calyrex before it would have gone down to that Max Quake.
Well, that was the thing. Whimsicott in this set so far seems to have been the Pokemon that is the critical deciding factor because, like you said, in Game 1, it gets the Tailwind up, which is brilliant, able to boost up the speed and start picking up those KOs. But in the Game 2, when going for that switcheroo strategy that unfortunately just didn't work out the way that Whimsicott wanted it to, it then kind of was just a little bit just unsatisfactory on that battlefield. It couldn't do what it wanted to do. It was just a little bit useless in that situation. But I think if Whimsicott in this Game 3 can come in and utilize itself strongly, whether it is going for that Tailwind or successfully going for the switcheroo, then again, that could be the deciding factor in a match.
Yeah, definitely could be. And something that players don't often tend to do is leave the Whimsicott in the back. It can Tailwind whenever it wants in the game. It usually is turn 1 to try and get that speed control, but if you leave it in the back and lead with your Charizard, you're still going to be able to get off the G-Max Wildfires most likely, and then you just Tailwind in the future to be able to outspeed the opposing Calyrex. So that could be an option that we see going forwards. You do have to still be wary of the Regieleki just going for the max moves into the Charizard. That might be why the Tailwind is necessary at that point.
Yes.
But you need to be able to click that Tailwind in that turn 1. The switcheroo would have been nice, but now we know about it. Potentially there's some mind games, like you could go for it. Even with it revealed, you could expect your opponent not to expect it anymore. But we'll have to see if that is going to come to fruition. But Tailwind was very crucial in the Game 1. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that as the strategy going forward, because it was very impactful and almost necessary for that Calyrex.
I think speed control's been really dominant in this particular game. You know, it's one of the things you have to do no matter what, but in this game in particular, the players have really been fighting and tussling in order to gain that control. Who's going to be the speedier one that's going to be able to pick up those KOs? And particularly if you allow Calyrex to gain that speed momentum, it gets the Grenade boost, and then it is not only fast, but it is furious as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll have to see if that is going to be a change-up that can happen here. It's going to be Whimsicott and Charizard still once again coming out for Frank's side of the field, and it is still going to be Calyrex Regieleki once again. So now we know about the switcheroo. Is it going to be fired off once again? Because there is nothing stopping the Tailwind coming out from the Whimsicott. It can absolutely go for the Tailwind, allowing the Charizard to guarantee at least one G-Max move, and the rest of the Pokemon to be able to outspeed the Charizard, the Calyrex on the opposing side of the field while the Tailwind is active. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see that, but then do you opt into that mind game with that potential switcheroo?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Whimsicott going for the Tailwind can be extremely beneficial, but like you said, Jamie, you will lose the Whimsicott at that point. I would honestly think there's no way to be able to stop that Tailwind going up, so you might as well capitalize on that situation and then try and get some damage coming through, removing, if possible, that Charizard from play as well, because if you can get the G-Max Wildfire set up, we've seen for Frank how incredibly beneficial that can be. So if Regieleki can maybe go for something like the Max Lightning into the Charizard, Calyrex following up, it could be really destructive.
Well, it's not a Max Lightning coming out this time. That is Frank once again Dynamaxing first, and only Frank Dynamaxing at this point, because the Calyrex and Regieleki would be Dynamaxing to start off with. So no Dynamax once again, no Max Lightning is coming out, no Max Airstreams to try and overtake the Tailwind that could be coming out from the Whimsicott. So it'll be interesting to see what is going to be fired off from this Regieleki.
Yeah, Whimsicott just going to go straight for the Tailwind here, so boosting up the speed on Frank's side of the field. This is the strategy that was very successful in that Game 1. G-Max Wildfire is going to connect down on Regieleki. We know Regieleki doesn't have a Focus Sash or anything, it's holding the Magnet, so it's going to be hit with a one-hit KO from the Wildfire. Before Regieleki is even able to move, that is going to be so detrimental to Fernando's strategy. Able to go for the Astral Barrage is not enough to even pick up the KO against the Whimsicott at this point. Eject button will be activating, and it gives Frank the opportunity to bring in a Pokemon from the back and further capitalize on the fact that Tailwind has been set up. This turn has worked perfectly for Frank.
Yeah, this is a fantastic turn 1 coming out for Frank. You've got the speed control, you've got the G-Max Wildfire activated, and you've got rid of the main Pokemon that would have been threatening down that Charizard. So you still have to contend with the Groudon that could go for a Rockfall into the Charizard, but you've got the speed control. You're outspeeding the Calyrex. Any potential sashes have now been broken thanks to that G-Max Wildfire. So the Charizard or the Zacian could either pick up the KO on the Calyrex. Behemoth Blade and G-Max Wildfire would absolutely do it. So Groudon is going to have to be the Pokemon to come in for Fernando, and you have to be able to threaten down the Charizard with that Rockfall that could come out. Rock Slide would not be enough at all. If you do go after the Charizard with the Rockfall, you are ignoring the Zacian that could just be going for all those Behemoth Blades that do so much damage. You've got potential of just going for Behemoth Blade and Wildfire into the Groudon as well. The Calyrex has not got any of its boost at this point that it just snowballed with in that game too. And the Charizard and the Zacian should be able to survive that attack, so you could very comfortably double up into the Groudon, which would be a knockout. A Behemoth Blade and a G-Max Wildfire would absolutely KO the Groudon, even if it went for the Dynamax. So you do have your choice of targets here. I would expect to see a KO on at least one of the Pokemon on Fernando's side of the field. It's just whether it's going to be spreading out your damage, whether it's Behemoth Blade into Calyrex and then Gmax Wildfire into Groudon, or if you do choose to double up into that Groudon.
No, very true. Very difficult for our players at this point. They are just a couple of turns away from determining if they're going to make it into our top 8 day 2 here in Bilbao. Switches galore, though, is going to be the Incineroar coming in, which is going to be a nice Intimidate throwdown onto that imposing Zacian. Charizard's not going to worry about it too much, but again, Incineroar is going to be able to take those fire-type attacks much better than something like the Calyrex would have been able to, and we're actually going to see the Dynamax come up here from that Groudon.
Yeah, so pretty much necessary at this point. You've got to be able to deal with the Zacian and the Charizard, and you need either Max Quake to KO the Zacian, Precipice Blade should not be enough, and you need Rockfall to KO the Charizard, Rock Slide would not be enough, so it has to be the Dynamax on this Groudon, and then where is it going to target?
That's the thing, is it Max Quake or Max Rockfall? It's the 50-50 choice. Zacian is going to go for the Behemoth Blade, going to be finding itself down onto the opposing Groudon. So catching the Dynamax Pokemon here doesn't quite do 50%, does probably around 40, I would say, with my maths, as Charizard goes for the Gmax Wildfire. So this double up, Frank realizing the Groudon really is the threat. Not enough to pick up the KO against it, but the residual damage will come into effect later, but not before Groudon is able to go for this Max Rockfall. Connecting down onto this opposing Charizard, removes it from the field, and sets up that residual sand damage as well. But, oh, what a survival there by the Groudon, able to retaliate, but not for long.
Well, that was a perfectly trained Groudon there. 1 HP is always the clutchest of survivals that you can get. Yeah, it's a shame that it is going to go down to the Gmax Wildfire, but it did the best that it could, and it's taken care of the Dynamax Charizard there. And now you just need to effectively stall out one more turn to get through the rest of the Tailwind, so your Calyrex is able to break through the rest of the team. You really have to be relying on this point. You've got an Intimidate down onto the opposing Zacian, and you've got Fake Out active as well, so you can put a stop to the Zacian or whatever switches in for Frank's side of the field, but then the Whimsicott is still just waiting in the back here, so at any point you can just bring in the Whimsicott and reset the Tailwind if you want to. And Groudon has been brought to this game for Frank, so it is going to be switching in here, so it's going to be a little bit awkward to break through the rest of the team, because you've got the Tailwind active and you can reset it as soon as the Whimsicott comes back on the field. At least you do have Fake Out on this turn, so you can put a stop to one of them, but Groudon's going to be able to do some massive damage with the Precipice Blade. Zacian's still going to be able to do some very respectable damage and probably KO this Calyrex with the Behemoth Blade in combination with the Wildfire that it's still active as well. So it's still a very strong position coming out here for Frank, and you just have to choose your Fake Out target and hope that your Calyrex is strong enough to be able to power through the rest of this game.
And once again, the eyes are on that Whimsicott, because yes, it's hiding in the back, and like you said, if you stall up the Tailwind, you can get another one set up when Whimsicott comes back on. But you have to get Whimsicott back in safely in order to do that. Groudon is going to go for a Protect, as is the Zacian. As you mentioned, Fake Outs on the field with that Incineroar. We've seen Frank do this previously in Game 1 when the Incineroar came in and had that Fake Out potential. Just doesn't want to lose a Pokemon unnecessarily to this Astral Barrage, obviously finding its mark into no thing. It's just going into the Protects at this point. Residual damage, of course, still going to play a little bit of a factor on that Calyrex. Incineroar being a fire type isn't going to worry about it whatsoever. But this is the thing, if you're Frank, you need to make sure that you're preserving the right Pokemon at the right time to get Whimsicott in, to get that Tailwind back up, where you're still able to connect on both these Pokemon. Something like the Precipice Blades will certainly be incredibly destructive, but you need to make sure that you're going to be able to KO both of them and not miss those moves.
You're not going to KO the Calyrex this turn. It is going to be protecting itself on that final turn of the Tailwind. And Behemoth Blade is going to target that down, so they're not going to be able to find its mark there. And Precipice Blades is fired off into the opposing Incineroar, does connect, so you're getting some very good damage into that opposing Incineroar. I would say a KO is very good damage, so yes, the Incineroar is going to drop there. And now the Gmax Wildfire is still racking up. Both Pokemon on Frank's side of the field are still at full HP. The Calyrex has not got any of its boost at this point. If you manage to KO one of the Pokemon, Whimsicott can just set up that Tailwind once again. So it does look like Frank will be advancing into the top cut tomorrow.
Yeah, Calyrex, it may be offensively very strong, but defensively doesn't quite have the utility to be able to survive against both a Zacian and a Groudon. Zacian able to do something very strong with the Behemoth Blade, and Groudon could go for a Precipice Blade or anything at this point. Calyrex is able to move first, though, however, with the Astral Barrage. We've seen when it gets angry how much it can do with critical hits, but none to be seen here. Zacian and Groudon able to survive, and it looks like Zacian's going to be able to retaliate with that Behemoth Blade and take the game for Frank. So Frank will be able to take this set and advance into day 2.
Yeah, fantastic showing coming out there for Well, Frank, and congratulations for making it into Top Cut. That was a great feature match. A little bit of a shame we don't get to see the really cool Pokemon, but I'm sure they were very impactful throughout the rest of their Swiss runs. So we will hopefully see that Snorlax tomorrow as we featured it on the stream. Maybe there will be enough resistance for Fernando to still make it on, because I would like to see that Cradily come out, but we saw some very strong Pokemon coming out in this matchup at least, and congratulations to Frank.
Yeah, well done to both Frank and Fernando. They certainly gave us quite an amazing match to watch, and I always love it when it pushes through to a Game 3 as well, because it gives you guys at home as well such a showcase and masterclass of how players can adapt, how they can be really flexible with their teams, and hopefully it's a little bit of inspiration for you guys at home as well, and you can see a little bit about how these players are able to adapt, particularly when they're a game down, and kind of keep that calm composure going forward, particularly at the end of a long day. You've got your friends around you as well cheering. You can see on the stream there's some people making, wanting to find out if their friends are getting through, and it's that kind of atmosphere that you have at live events I think we've all sorely missed.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic experience so far, and a great conclusion to today with a great game to finish it off. So we will be seeing who made it into the Top Cut. It will be very nice to see who has made it, and which of the 6-2s, if any, have made it into the Top Cut as well, because if they do, then we could be featuring Fernando tomorrow as well, and that would be great to see.
Exactly, but we're going to grab our winner for a quick interview, so don't go anywhere, Pokemon trainers. We will be right back.
Hello and welcome back to the conclusion of the Swiss rounds of the Pokemon 2022 Bochum Special Event. And I'm here with the victor of the previous round, making it into the Top Cut tomorrow. Congratulations, Frank. How are you feeling?
Très bien.
I'm feeling very good. As you should be. It's very, very great to see you into the Top Cuts. So you had a very cool team coming out here. I'm quite interested in the Snorlax. We didn't see Snorlax, unfortunately, in that game, but why did you bring Snorlax to this tournament?
Ta team est très intéressante et il est particulièrement intéressé par le Ronflex. Et il demande
Why did you bring Snorlax to this tournament?
pourquoi est-ce que tu as pris ce Pokémon à ce tournoi.
Ok, alors Ronflex, Snorlax, je l'ai pris tout simplement pour contrer donc, les Calyrex Shadow, Lunala et surtout les Pokémon poseurs de poudre, puisque je le joue Safety Goggles.
I took Snorlax to counter Calyrex and Nala, those types, and uses of sleep powders because it is safety goggles.
Ah, okay, that makes a lot of sense, yes. Yeah, that would be very impactful. You both led the same Pokemon in all three games, but all game ones were very different. You had the switcheroo, but you didn't that you had as well onto Regieleki. What made you decide to go for the switcheroo on that game too?
Vous avez utilisé les mêmes leads pendant les 3 games, mais qu'est-ce qui t'a fait dans la game 2 utiliser Switcheroo?
Tout simplement parce que je pensais que Regieleki allait Dynamax et que du coup je voulais retirer le Dynamax pour qu'il puisse plus rien faire.
Because I was convinced that they were going to use Dynamax that they were going to Dynamax the Regieleki, and I wanted to get rid of the Dynamax.
Yeah, that would have been a good way of getting rid of it, but Tailwind was very crucial in that game 3, and it was very impactful in that end game. How are you feeling after your Calyrex got the critical hits to be able to KO the Groudon?
Comment tu t'es senti quand le Calyrex a eu un coup critique dans la manche 3?
Bah, je me suis dit que la game était perdue, mais que je pouvais me rattraper en game 3, donc voilà, ça m'a pas fait non plus trop mal. Donc je disais que le crit m'a pas trop fait mal, puisque du coup c'était perdu, et que je me suis remis direct pour la game 3.
The crit didn't really affect me that much, and I just made sure that the next game was going to be there.
Yeah, and so you did very well in that final game. So congratulations on moving on to the Top Cut. We will be seeing you tomorrow. Are there any final shout-outs you want to give before we conclude?
Est-ce que tu veux donner une dédicace à quelqu'un en particulier?
Alors, dédicace forcément à tout le groupe VGCFR.
Special shout-outs to all the VGC friends group.
À ma famille, mon frère, et puis tous ceux qui me supportent, voilà.
Everybody who vouched for me.
Well, thank you very much, Frank, and congratulations to making it into the Top Cut for tomorrow. So
Thank you.
that is going to conclude it for us for today. And congratulations to all the players that have made it into Top Cut, including Frank here. And so we have had a fantastic stream, so we hope that you will join us tomorrow for the Top Cut.